Welcome back to the Wacky Wonderful Wiseworks podcast, all you guys, gals, geeks, and goofballs. Hey there, fellas.
Hi.
Hi.
Have you guys been, I know you already went to the theater and watched it, Joseph. Well, I kind of know the answer for all of you, but I've been peeping at some of that Chosen content.
Episode 1 and 2?
Episode 1 and 2. I watched them. I live streamed them on, couldn't get on the app. The app was a little glitchy, too many people trying to watch it. So I had to stream it from the YouTubes. And it was really good. Really good. I'm looking forward to episode 3. I already know what happens, so a little spoiler. But
no, you don't.
I kind of know.
Well, kind of. But look, this season is a upward trajectory of intrigue, mystery, a lot of heartache and emotions, and it's a real thrill ride. In some ways, I'm almost kind of envious that I'm not able to experience it fresh as the show's rolling out, because when I went to the theater, it's like episode 1, 2, and 3, boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then episode 4, 5, and 6, boom, one viewing. And then episode 7 and 8, boom, and the season's done. And I'm like, I watched the whole season in 3 theater visits. So it almost feels like the cliffhangers at the end of episodes and whatnot don't hold as much weight. You know what I mean?
Let me see. I want to pull this up to see if it
Wait, are you peeking at it at all?
I haven't yet.
I don't get on the Chosen, man.
I know the thing is, like, I haven't jumped into it. I know once I jump into it, I'm binging the whole show.
Just jump in to see episode
there's no numbers on the actual app for the Chosen, but let's go to the YouTube and just peer at some of the numbers they did for the live streams on the YouTube.
All right, I'll pull it up.
Well, I'm pulling it up right now. I got it on my phone. So episode, where is it? Oh, live streams. I gotta go live stream. Okay, episode 1 has 814,000 views on YouTube. So almost they're creeping up on 1 million for the first episode, and then episode 2. Oh, excuse me. That was episode 2. Episode 1 has 1.4 million, and episode 2 is 800.
Yeah. So
episode 1 already has
on just YouTube
1.4. Yeah.
So who knows how many people were watching via the Chosen app, right? Or via?
It's got to be close to. You think it's close to 4 million? Maybe.
Maybe not. Real quick, no? Is it via or via?
Either or.
Okay.
Via. They also streamed it, I think, on Facebook. I don't have those numbers, but I think they did it on some of the socials also. So, we're not including those numbers.
You also got episode 3 coming out Sunday. So when this comes out for the Patreon, hopefully everybody watched that. If you haven't, go check it out. It seems like they're just going to roll out the entire season here on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. They're like, well, it's free on the Chosen app. We're going to do it free on YouTube as well. See, Wyatt, you don't even have to get on the app to watch it. It's right here on YouTube.
To watch the other seasons, you got to catch yourself up a little bit.
True. But it's all right there on YouTube, man, which actually lends super well to our conversation towards the end of today's podcast. But I don't want to jump into it too quickly. But I got to ask you guys.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, Joshua, and then Wyatt from an outside perspective, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, with the first 2 episodes of this season and everything you've seen so far, do you think a story about the followers of Jesus, like a series about the ministry of Jesus, could be done better? There's going to be plenty of people online that say, absolutely, they're not biblical. They add to scripture all different kinds of stuff.
I don't think from a writing perspective, maybe a tiny bit from an acting perspective. I love all the actors that are in it, but they did start
They're not all the top tier actors, right?
Yes, they did start out very indie. It felt, and you could tell, like, not a lot of crowds, not a lot of effort was given as much in the first one because of the budget and this or that. But now you can tell season 4, there's a lot more crowds. Even
season 3, right?
Yeah, season 3. But in
Feeding
season 4,
5,000.
what was the episode? I think they were just walking through the city, and
the city feels full. Feels like a city.
The city feels full, and you're like, this is a city. It's not a ton of people, but it's full. It feels good.
It's enough to feel like a city.
If I was going to give any complaints, I wish season 1 could have started now.
And you wish they had this kind of production quality on season 1.
Production for season 1, and then build till
further than that. Yeah, you're just basically saying it started a bit weak sauce when it come to production and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's grown into something awesome.
Yeah, maybe if they did a couple more films, like, they did the Shepherd one, they did if they did a few more films to get people excited, and then they started the show, I don't know if it would work out as good.
They had no idea.
But man, that's how TV used to work. Is the shows would start out. That's how a lot of like shows on Sci-Fi and these other channels would work. Is you'd put out a show, you'd run it for a while, and depending on how many views it got, kind of dictated if it stayed on TV.
Right.
And then they finished a season. They were like, wow, that was really good. And then, the studio would give them more money. And so the next season it would be better. It would look better. It would have better sets. And that's how it worked. So I think that, I think the question being if somebody could do it better. Sure. It could be done better, but I think it's being done pretty well.
Yeah, I don't have any complaints from writing. It's all of production, and I know they did the best they could with what they had, and they are still, but I just wish season 1 was now. I do have one thing to kind of reiterate on that. In this last episode, they put a tag at the beginning of the show, this episode, episode 2, this disciple is going to be played by this actor. And it's like they changed one of the disciples because it's getting so big, and for various reasons they had to change one of the disciples. And so they're even changing stuff now 4 seasons in because it's gotten so big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm that happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to recast.
And you got a lot of characters. I mean, you got 12 disciples plus the women, plus all these side characters that may or may not be biblical, you know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a lot of characters to juggle. 7 seasons is a big ask. Like that's a Game of Thrones level size ask of dedication, right?
Yeah.
However, they're managing to hold on to their primary. You know what wouldn't work? Recasting Jonathan. That wouldn't work. Or recasting the guy who plays Simon. You can't recast him. He's too important.
You can't.
Mary Magdalene. You can't recast her.
I think that would kill the series if they recast Jesus during when they're having to do the crucifixion, and that you're like, this is a completely different actor.
That's the same as you have to build a relationship with your characters. Everybody would feel like it was too different, that they wouldn't have an invested emotional reaction to his.
And I've seen shows that have done that. It's like, they're getting to these pinnacle emotional points, and then they have to recast, and kind of kills the momentum.
And the bad thing about this is, especially with some of these big characters, we know what happens. Like we know the big character arcs. You know what I mean?
Nobody's going like, dude,
you can't just change
what's
the
up?
script.
You think, man, what's going to happen with this Judas character? He's my favorite.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because they haven't showed us the actor who's playing Judas. They haven't showed us much of his, character and arcs and all that yet. He's just kind of in the background a little bit. And so I'm looking forward to seeing
that might be on purpose.
This season is
I think they'll tell more. I think they'll tell more, but I personally would hesitate to attempt to tell not exactly, but like what Judas is thinking and going through because you don't want to make him a
Can I give you it's not really a spoiler, but I've seen everything, so I want to give insight, right? Because I see what you're saying, but ultimately
you don't want to make him relatably tragic.
Right.
You do want to make him a tragic character, because he is a tragic character, but he's not relatably tragic. He's tragic for different reasons.
Okay. The big theme with the disciples for almost all of them this season is that they don't understand what Jesus is trying to say, right? You know the scripture where the woman washes Jesus's feet with very expensive oil, right?
Yeah.
And anoints his feet and then dries it with her hair. And then in that same scripture, Judas says, why was this expensive oil not sold and given to the poor? And then Jesus responds with, the poor will always be with you. You know what I mean? Like this, she's preparing my body for burial. That Judas's response in that, and not to spoil anything too big, that scene does take place in the season. However, that energy that Judas brought in that situation, the annoyance, the why, like not understanding Jesus's words, not understanding his teachings, not understanding the importance, and kind of having his own mentality about how Jesus should run his ministry. That is the theme for Judas for the entire season 4.
Yeah, but I think they need to make that. I think they need to make that a point. Yes, but other disciples have said sort of damning things, I guess, and like you're like, gosh, what a fool this person is, and then Peter going so far as to curse Jesus Christ, and deny him. The difference between him and Judas is that he realized that he was wrong and could be redeemed, and Judas didn't accept that.
Right.
And so, it's an apostate versus an apostle, essentially.
Right. That makes sense. But I think overall there's levels of, they're telling a lot of stories. I think a lot of the disciples have an overarching view of Jesus that is relatable as humans, like the kind of view of saying, I don't understand God or his intentions or his plans for me. And they're trying to apply that to the disciples' situations where they don't understand when Jesus is saying these things about, the Lamb of God will be risen on the third day and stuff like that. They're not understanding exactly what he's talking about because they're looking through the lens of he's going to be a conquering king.
Right.
And especially for Judas, I think the only big difference with this season is that Jesus is the one who needs encouragement, right? And the disciples are not there to provide that for him. And so it's a very, very awesome season. I look forward to. I really want you to watch it, Wyatt. You got to get on this.
Yeah.
The biggest criticism.
Yeah, you have to watch it. The
biggest criticism for the show, but especially in this season for some reason, and a little bit in season 3, is the scenes are very long. They really draw out a lot of these dialogue scenes, but that's forgivable. Some of these dialogue scenes last like 15 minutes straight, so very, very interesting. All right, so getting into the first segment, I wanted to ask you two fellas, would you be willing and ready to go down a rabbit hole, maybe a hobbit hole with me? Okay.
I thought you were talking
into
about
Middle Earth.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about one in Wonderland.
No.
I'd be more hesitant to go into Wonderland.
Yeah.
I'd rather go to Middle Earth.
All right. So have you guys ever wondered what it would be like if Guillermo Del Toro was the one who ended up directing the Hobbit movies?
I've been curious about it. I think it would have been strange.
Okay. So this is what we're going to explore for a while. I have a lot of information.
Okay.
We're going to get to the truth, why he left production. Okay. We're going to get to what it would have been like. Also, what were some of his plans? And so we're going to explore in depth what the Hobbit movies would have been if Guillermo Del Toro ended up being the director of the whole thing. I have a lot of information.
I got a question. How did you get this picture?
This is AI.
Yeah, but how did you get Guillermo Del Toro in this picture?
I don't know why. All right. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to warn you, this is not the only AI generated piece of work I have for this segment. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
But since you brought it up early, I just put in the Bing one. Okay. And I just put in Guillermo Del Toro art or filmmaking style, and then imagine like this thing from the Hobbit story. Yeah. Okay. And it did a lot of really good options, but because Guillermo Del Toro's name was in there, it either made certain characters resemble him, right, in the generation, or they just added him to the photo in some capacity. Yeah. So that it really blows my mind how he was. I did Guillermo Del Toro art style, so it didn't block it at all. Mm-hmm. And he was added to it.
Gotcha.
But I didn't ask it to, all right? And it just automatically did. So it's just a happy circumstance. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First off, we know that Peter Jackson ended up directing it. We know that the Hobbit movies feel very different from the original Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. And I actually have some insight that we have never talked about on this podcast or in person that we've never talked about regarding the reason it looks a certain way. All right. Okay. All the reasons behind it. And I'll give you a heads up. Guillermo del Toro has a lot to do with that. Mm-hmm. So first off, I just want to say a lot of the information, especially around his vision for the story, I got from the Bullets and Blockbusters YouTube channel. Cool. That is who I am referencing. If they have information wrong, there's a chance all this could be incorrect. Not all of it, because I found some of it online myself, but in my research, I came across some of their content on their channel. And so I am using them as a resource for some of this content and some of this information. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to cite my references. All right. So getting into Peter Jackson, Guillermo del Toro. First off, Guillermo del Toro was super excited to be on this project. Mm-hmm. He was thrilled about it. Right off the bat, I wanted to ask you, before we get into all the details, your first thoughts. If he was the director of this, do you think it would have been better or lacking from what the final product was?
It would have been a little darker, I feel like.
I think it would have ultimately been somewhat similar. Because
to the original, to what we got?
Because a lot of what happened with the Hobbit movies was producer notes. I think producer notes destroyed a lot of the good stuff. They only wanted to originally do like 2 movies.
I have all that information. Yeah.
And I just like if they had just let Peter Jackson go, just let him rip, let him roll.
Yeah.
I think it would have been good. I think if they had let Guillermo del Toro just go, mm-hmm. It probably would have been good. But because he would have told it like a fairy tale, like The Hobbit kind of was a fairy tale, and I think they both would have told it in some way like that, rather than the way it turned out, which was they wanted another big, huge. They wanted another Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's what they were trying to get.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I don't think it would have been different if Guillermo did it, but I think ultimately what I wanted as a viewer, what I was going into it expecting, I've already read the books and everything. I wanted more of what, like Wyatt said, a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. Put in the music, because there's so much music, poems. There's a lot of that fantasy element. This is Bilbo writing a story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and not Lord of the Rings.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys some information, and then we'll discuss it. Okay. So some of it's correct. I will say also some of what you said, Wyatt, about it being very similar is I think you're partially right. Okay. So this is the reason. You're right. It originally was going to be 2 books. However, with Guillermo's vision and Peter Jackson, this was his original idea. Then they maneuvered from that, and then they maneuvered from this again. So the original idea was the Hobbit story, the book, was going to be in 1 movie. The second movie was actually going to be a movie about like the White Council meeting and everything with Gandalf and Saruman and Galadriel, and then also tell the story about Gollum going on his travel to Mordor, which actually it seems like they're actually coming back into that story with this new announcement about the hunt for Gollum that their Warner Brothers is wanting to make. But they were going to tell that story in a second book. And what they wanted to do was Guillermo wanted to tell, quote, a very fairy tale-like version of The Hobbit. And then they wanted to use this second movie to bridge the gap of art style to the Peter Jackson movies. Meaning Guillermo Del Toro has 1 movie, Peter Jackson has the trilogy. This second movie that was going to tell the events in between The Hobbit and the start of the Lord of the Rings movies was going to bridge the gap of art style and story. So things like the Necromancer, things like Dol Guldur and all that would have happened in that, right? Eventually they, and that was originally Peter Jackson's idea, and Guillermo loved it. But they diverted from that, and the studio put a little pressure on them, and they just decided, okay, they want to milk this for all it's worth, so we're just going to make the Hobbit story into 2 movies, and we're going to add a lot of those things like, you know, Dol Guldur and all that, and the Necromancer into the book, all right?
Yeah.
Into the 2 films, but the both films are going to tell the Bilbo story, all right? Which is kind of similar to what we got in the end.
I think it would have worked out better. You could have cut out a lot of fluff, and still had some really good.
So what you're saying is Peter Jackson's original idea and Guillermo being on board was the right initial choice, and then all this diversions into multiple movies.
Oh, like clearly these 2 kind of had a plan.
Yeah.
Right. They had a plan going in, and they got screwed. And the biggest thing, I think one of the biggest issues that you can have, okay, I mean, take it with a grain of salt.
I will.
Is a studio not letting a director do their thing.
Right.
Right. Let them create. Now, I think there is a flip side of that coin where
cake.
You can let the director do whatever they want and get a terrible movie that way too.
Yeah.
However, these guys, I mean, I have some issues with Guillermo Del Toro, but these guys together had a vision, and they weren't allowed to execute their vision, and that's what killed it.
All right, so that you're right, and there's more to it. All right,
yeah, so I'm sure there's
so much to this.
Yeah, I'm only paraphrasing because I don't have all of the information.
Which it's good to discuss. I want to hear these thoughts. So, as an example, so like the Battle of the Five Armies, if you read the Hobbit book, Tolkien wrote it as if Bilbo got knocked out and missed the whole battle, right? That's how the book reads. And I think there's a little moment that alludes to him getting knocked out in the movies, but not for the whole battle, right?
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro and Jackson were really on board with this because Tolkien did it for a reason. Because it was meant to be a children's book, he didn't want to highlight war, and he had served in World War II and all that Tolkien did. And so they really wanted to respect the reason why Tolkien did that for the Hobbit story. Different than Lord of the Rings. So they didn't want these big, massive army, Lord of the Rings style battles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The studio didn't want that. They wanted the big.
Can you tell though? Every decision, almost everything in these movies, you can look at it and be like, "This is studio interception."
Exactly.
Where it's like, look at the book and it's like, oh, Bilbo's knocked out because Tolkien really didn't want to glorify war and battle in a children's book, and the studio's like, no, we want Lord of the Rings. No, we want battles in this. We want Lord of the Rings.
Remember berries.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and that also, when you have huge battles, that lends itself to like a third movie where they're like, okay, I got to do the whole Battle of the Five Armies as a whole movie. So another interesting, to finish the timeline of events, just so we can get into how it would have looked if we accomplished Guillermo's vision, right? So the ultimate reason he left is because they didn't get to production fast enough.
Yeah.
So he had other obligations, and he was signed up for 3 years to work on this. Pre-production for a year and a half with Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and all these people, getting his vision out there. For a year and a half, they planned Guillermo Del Toro's vision, everything from how the practical effects were going to be, the animation, how Smaug was going to look, for a year and a half. And then MGM, one of the CEOs, was negotiating. They're getting into financial issues, and they're negotiating bankruptcy deals. This delayed it like another year plus. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, Guillermo has other obligations that he has to do, and there's no more time for him to be able to work on this project.
Gosh, what was he working on at this time?
I actually looked it up.
The Strain? Was he working on The Strain?
Probably. It also could have been
TV
anything,
show?
dude, because he does like a lot of writing for people too. You know what I mean? So it's hard to tell what he was actually working on that he had to leave the project for. 2010. There's actually an article here I wanted to show you. There's actually an article from 2010 on the onering.net where they announced, I found it where they announced that Guillermo was leaving The Hobbit, right? And there's a quote from Guillermo, and there's a quote from Peter Jackson. This is Guillermo's quote. He's very upset, very, very disappointed. Peter Jackson says, like, we're really going to miss him. We are going to do everything we can to do the story justice and everything like that. Okay, so to finish off.
I will say that The Strain came out in 2014. But if they were working on it beforehand, it could have been something that TV show stuff.
Right. So there wasn't any internal conflict. The studio didn't fire him, nothing like that. He had to leave contractually because the studio, not only are they putting pressure on them to do certain things a certain way, but also they were dealing with financial issues, and it delayed production getting started. So that's ultimately when Peter Jackson took it. After Peter Jackson took it is there's actually a really interesting interview quote where in order for them to start production and have somewhat of a good timeline for this thing, they had spent a year and a half creating Guillermo's vision of The Hobbit, 2 Hobbit movies.
Yeah.
They gave them 4 months to start production, roughly around 4 months, just a few months to transfer Peter Jackson becoming the director of this project now, instead of just a co-writer, into becoming the director and accomplish his vision, right? And then all of a sudden, you got all the pressures from the studio and everything. This is a big reason. It's also like, I think animation-wise, I think Peter Jackson was really into Weta and what it could do, and he wanted to test a lot of ideas. So they leaned on animation so much more in The Hobbit than they did in Lord of the Rings. But ultimately there was like a lot of issues. It turned into 3 movies. They had a Battle of the 5 Armies, which was like a whole battle roughly for one movie.
Something like Lord of the Rings, they storyboarded basically all the movies. They storyboarded entire scenes and where they drew what happened.
Yes.
They had artists draw what's happening in the scene like you would for a cartoon.
Yeah.
So they knew kind of how they wanted a scene to be set up and played out. Imagine doing something like that for 2 movies with specific people. Then one of the guys has to leave, and they're like, well, now we want 3 movies.
And listen, Peter Jackson, this is a quote. This is a rough quote from him that he did an interview with. He said when he became director and Guillermo left, he looked at everything they had planned, and he said this would make a really awesome Guillermo del Toro movie. But I'm not Guillermo del Toro, and I cannot just accomplish his vision for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why they had to change a bunch. But I do have a theory that, and we'll probably reference this a lot, that there's a lot of Guillermo del Toro in the Hobbit movies.
Hobbit. Yeah.
The way things look, the way things were designed, even like the troll caves and everything. Like, I think there's a lot of Guillermo del Toro in the Hobbits that Peter Jackson, he changed a lot from Guillermo's vision, but ultimately I think there's still a lot of Guillermo del Toro's vision in the movies themselves, the way things look and everything. But I did want to get into a little bit of the specifics of what Guillermo del Toro's vision was, and then how it was changed when Peter Jackson became on board. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's see it.
All right. So first off, this is a little bit of filmmaking, like visual storytelling. We get in the weeds a little bit, but Guillermo del Toro wanted to use this color palette. You know how like films use color palettes to communicate certain things.
Yeah.
He wanted to use the colors green, blue, crimson, and gold to contrast each other, juxtaposition each other, and also communicate as the story got darker and darker. So green was obviously as the very bright Shire kind of situation. Yeah. We see that. And I think that's why when we watch The Hobbits, the colors really feel so bold. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because there's a part of that I think...
Especially the Shire.
That I think Peter Jackson probably was into. He probably didn't execute it the way that Guillermo wanted him to, but there was a lot that stuck around from that. Mm-hmm. The colors were very bold. So it's almost like a color palette that Guillermo wanted to use that ultimately didn't fully get used, right? I thought it was interesting that gold was in there because of, the nature of the story. Gold as a color palette choice is very interesting.
Well, you could also, he says gold and crimson. Mm-hmm. All of the scene with Smaug, which... Right. Is incredible stuff. Bilbo and Gollum, and then Bilbo and Smaug, like probably two of the best scenes in all the movies.
Well, think about it. If you look, Bilbo and Smaug does kind of have a goldish color palette, not just the gold, but the actual color of the image.
And Smaug. And Bilbo's vest, I think, is red.
Exactly. And then you get to Gollum's cave, which is blue. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So he followed similar color palettes that Guillermo's vision probably had for this.
Gold sounds like Guillermo. Like the things I've watched of his, gold in general, that color overlay feels like him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you could say like a specific director has a look. Some do. I don't think everything they do has a look, but gold for me, just saying that in Guillermo sounds like him.
Right. I already mentioned this, but the original idea was that second movie to be a bridge to kind of, because Guillermo was going to take it pretty far, his vision, as far as the way Middle Earth and the story looked. And that second movie was to bridge the gap between Peter Jackson and them. So that was I think that's a great way to handle it, is to have a bridging film, but they didn't end up doing that. So, but that was originally one of the ideas. Smaug, interestingly enough, you guys might disagree with Del Toro a little bit on this, but Smaug was going to be more of a snake-like dragon. What did I say?
Yeah,
I said Smaug.
Smaug was going to be
like
more
the hate covers over LA.
Right.
What was it going to be? What do you call Damon's dragon in House of the Dragon?
Bloodworm?
No. What type of dragon? It's not
it's a wyvern.
Wyvern?
They're wyverns.
Wyvern.
And both are pretty serpentine.
Yeah, Smaug was going to be the same type, but he was actually going to he wanted to be more snake-like with very small arms. Mm-hmm. He also wanted to have Smaug's head shaped like an axe. This is some concept art.
Okay.
And have his eyes difficult to find on his face to create the tension. You know what I mean?
I like that better. I like really that cool. Better. It's the snake-like dragons, to me, just by looking at them, I feel a greedy gold feel. Like I could feel the snake. It's like greedy for gold. I feel that when I see that type of dragon.
He also wanted to create the mouth of Smaug very expressive, because he was worried if it went too live action style, like a dragon style, it wouldn't be able to communicate the emotions well, kind of like we saw with the Lion King live actions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
which I feel like as far as expression goes, Peter Jackson's version did accomplish that.
I feel like there's some scenes with Smaug, especially where Durin's on, or not Durin. Oh my gosh, Thorin.
Right?
Thorin is on the statue. He's on the chain.
Yeah,
and Smaug is like staring at him eye to eye. Or when the archer bard is about to shoot Smaug, you can see anger and fury in his eyes. Really good.
But there was rumors that actually the style that Del Toro wanted for like the expressive face wasn't popular at Weta. I think the whole dragon wasn't super popular at Weta.
I can see animators looking at it and being like,
that ain't a dragon.
like this kind of sucks.
Yeah. So
and that's something you got to work out with your creators.
Exactly.
You got to be able to workshop your design so that people who animate, you got to trust their vision too.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And trust that you guys can work together.
Correct. And apparently,
you say correct.
I said correct.
I like correct better.
Correct.
All right. Correct. So yeah, they obviously went with
correct.
They obviously went with more of a classic style dragon, but they kept a lot of the expression. Peter Jackson did a good job with Smaug.
Yeah, and he's got a nice long neck, which is pretty good.
Right. Azog, the white orc, the pale orc.
Yeah.
Del Toro's version was going to be practical and not animated.
I've heard this before.
Isn't that kind of a bummer?
So Azog was in the book, but he was only mentioned. He was not a prominent character at all. I think he's only got like maybe a couple, like a paragraph, or a sentence maybe. He's not like very prominent at all in the book.
But like, I mean, they should have continued. Like, he's a good villain. You know,
would have been better practical.
It would have been better practical.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, Del Toro wanted almost everything, landscapes and everything, to be practical, everything, and use big animatronics, rely on that as much as they could, and do very minimal animation. So obviously Smaug was going to be animated, and he did not want to mess at all with Gollum's look and everything. He wanted to mimic Peter Jackson's Gollum. So Gollum would have been animated and the same as Peter Jackson's films.
We've never looked at the budget. Maybe this is too much to go off the path, but what the budget between like what they spent and how much they made on the Hobbits specifically. I'm curious what that kind of was, because anything practical and making it going that direction is going to be very expensive compared to like just making it digital. It's a lot more cheaper. It is expensive, but it's still it's cheaper.
I got a question.
So, yeah.
So, do you guys think inside of Peter Jackson's vision, right, the way things look, does Gollum fit? Would it be strange? Would it be strange for him to step inside of what that looks like?
Personally, no. Which after we talk through these details, I actually have another additional segment after this that we're going to go through. But because I think it would have looked like Gollum. I think it would have just been slightly different. Maybe age him down a touch, right? But I do think it would have fit, because
they make him look less weathered.
Right. I think what we got from the Hobbit movies is, as far as the look of things, not the animation style, but like the look and color and the world and everything, was very close to what Del Toro visioned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, Gollum, I feel like in the movie, all the scenes with Gollum are perfect in my opinion. It's excellent stuff. I think it would have been interesting him stepping into a more Del Toro style world, but I definitely think if their plan was to use kind of a Gollum story, some of the Gollum story, to transition us from Del Toro's movie to Lord of the Rings, it would have felt like an easy transition if he's in The Hobbit.
Right. But apparently there was a quote from Del Toro that said, "If it's not broke, don't fix it." And that was his approach to the Gollum character.
Hey,
So,
it's excellent.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So very limited animation, a lot of animatronics, a lot of miniature practicals, just like they did with the Lord of the Rings. That's what he wanted, right?
Which makes sense, though. I mean, Lord of the Rings was such on the cutting edge of animation, and with like creating big armies and digitalizing that because they couldn't have that many actors coming to have like 10,000 actors for an army.
Yeah.
So they had to animate that, and they had
were-
never done that before. So it makes sense that a guy who created something like that with Weta and Peter Jackson wants to push the envelope a little bit with animation, but it just wasn't as good.
I think people got a little bit too caught up in what animation can do, and not how do we use it to make the accentuate the movie, not rely on it. People rely on the animation now because of how good, how the amazing things it did during the Lord of the Rings time. But they were using it to accentuate their story and to tell their story. And that's why they were making advances in it. It wasn't to rely on it so unbelievably heavily that we built an entire movie industry around it.
Correct. I got two more changes before we go to the next bit.
Okay.
But this is around casting. So apparently Del Toro really wanted Ian Holm to remain Bilbo, right? The guy who played Bilbo in Lord of the Rings. He was very confident for some reason that they could use makeup to age him down, and they really wanted to keep Ian. Ian refused. He didn't want to do the part.
Yeah.
He just did the little bit intro and outro of the films for Peter Jackson.
I think
right?
smart.
Before they went to who ended up, what's the guy's name who played
Martin Freeman?
Yeah.
Martin Freeman.
Before they got to him, they actually pursued James McAvoy.
Okay. Really?
Who also turned it down, saying he wouldn't be the right fit.
McAvoy would be where would McAvoy fit in Lord of the Rings? Human, elf, Hobbit?
I think he would have been a good Bilbo. I really like James McAvoy's acting. He's really good.
He's got the chops.
He could have done a Bilbo for sure.
I think he would have played a good elf as well.
He would have been a great elf. I think he could probably play. He might maybe not be the best dwarf, but he could play almost any character.
He probably could have been Legolas's father.
Elf. Oh yeah.
Or swap out girl elf, forgettable girl elf, and swap in like I would have, if you were going to stick with having Legolas in it, I probably would have swapped out Legolas. Have a new Legolas like character and just have it be the James McAvoy elf. Right. But if you were going to have Legolas as well, have it be the Mirkwood hunting party.
Right.
The like 3 or 4 elf bros.
Yeah, elf bros.
Elf bros.
And have them be characters as well. That would have been awesome.
Yeah. Another thing that I don't know how you would feel about this, Wyatt, but Del Toro apparently was rumored also really wanting Ian McShane to play Thorin Oakenshield.
Ian McShane?
Yes.
Well, okay. So Thorin is old. Mm-hmm. He's not young.
Ian McShane as Thorin Oakenshield. The guy who plays Blackbeard in one of the worst pirates.
Okay.
He plays in a lot of good stuff. I just wanted to bring that out.
You need to maybe not use that as an example.
He could have played a character, but not Thorin. He's too old for Thorin.
Everybody remembers him as the villain from Agent Cody Banks.
Yes, he swallowed that ice, that nanobots that ate his body. Yeah, really good role for Ian.
Most people nowadays probably recognize him as the hotel manager from John Wick, or the owner from John Wick.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I don't know that I would see him as Thorin. I mean,
no, I don't.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Maybe Balin. Maybe an older dwarf like Balin.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, or no, that's too dark. He's
There's also rumors that maybe Del Toro was thinking about Ian for a different dwarf, but since he's such a high profile actor, people assumed it was for Thorin. You know what I mean?
Could be.
This is a smaller role, but he's more prevalent in the book than the movie. What's the bear character that they spend the night at his cabin? He's got
Bjorn.
I could see him as Bjorn.
Yeah, I could see him as something like that.
Beorn, yeah.
Beorn. I could have seen him as Beorn.
I feel like he could be a character like that, but they didn't make that character very prevalent, and he wasn't in the movie very much. Very quick.
Apparently, the guy who plays Beorn, actually, Del Toro. I don't know that actor's name, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, in the video that I watched from these guys, they said that character, they casted the actor and said, mm-hmm. you can kind of have like your pick of these certain characters, and he chose Beorn.
Really?
So yeah,
he's a good character.
So, it just the guy who played the guy. No, not
in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. But the guy that is in The Hobbit as Beorn, it was the guy that Del Toro kind of gave him the option of a few characters for, and he chose that role.
Yeah.
So after all this information, after hearing the original idea that Jackson and Del Toro had for the 2-movie, 1-2 punch, hearing all the things that Del Toro wanted to do with the practicals, the smog idea and everything, and then hearing that afterwards Jackson made it into 3 movies, added a bunch of stuff like, the relationship between the elf and the dwarf, probably adding Legolas to it. I don't know if he was going to be in Del Toro's version. All of like the extensive fight scenes and everything. I know we're privy to, and we're relatively apologetic compared to some people for the Hobbit movies. But do you think that it was just a bit bloated and that Del Toro would have done better?
I kind of maintain my opinion that the studio would have done the same thing that they did to Jackson. They would have, studio notes, bloated executives, they would have bloated it. And I think it was good that Jackson stayed on.
Well, if they gave anyone else, it would have been a complete.
I think it's good because it maintains coherence with Lord of the Rings, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And he was there preparing with Del Toro.
In the way that, especially in the way that a lot of the characters deliver lines and have interactions. Anybody who says that there's no character arcs in those movies, I think that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think Thorin has a strong character arc.
Yeah.
And he plays it very well.
Yeah.
I think it's good Jackson got it, because I don't want anybody else to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And we do criticize Peter Jackson's animation quite a bit by saying if it was practical, it would have been better. But to me, things that were practical that they carried over from the original Lord of the Rings, like the Hobbit feet, the Hobbit ears, were way too big in the Hobbit movies compared to the Lord of the Rings. Like the feet, they made way bigger in the Hobbit movies compared to the Lord of the Rings. That seemed goofy, and even though they're practical, they're goofy to me.
And that seems like leftovers from Del Toro. It's like, we're making it a little bit more of a fairy tale. Make the ears a little bigger. Make the feet a little bit bigger, right?
They're not good. It doesn't seem believable to me.
Make it seem a little bit more fairy tale-y.
Yeah.
And then blend them with the other movie. I think that makes sense. And
it might have been Del Toro, but
I think it got left over.
Practical is what we praise more on this podcast, but I think practical can also be a downfall. I don't want to say it's the best. So I don't know if I can say yay or nay to Peter Jackson and the decisions he made. But yes, I would agree that because this was more of, they had the Hollywood, the Lord of the Rings was such a popular movie at this point that there's the production, the company was going to be looking at The Hobbit and making more decisions and making Peter Jackson do things because they had the Lord of the Rings. That was such a popular movie. So they're going to have executives looking at it and saying, do this, do that.
It wasn't like just here's the money, go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
You know, have at it.
He
we'll see what you can make.
It like he could in Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings they didn't know what it was going to be, and they kind of just did their own thing for that. So ultimately, we can't change things, and we don't know if they changed it, would it be better or worse. So,
and I also, challenge anybody to go back and watch the movies. Look at Azog. Look at the other orc. I forget his name. The one with the crap in his head.
Yeah.
They look awesome. They look cool. It is not practical, but I mean, look at some of the character, the CGI character stuff we have now. Good grief! I mean, compared to some of the scenes with those guys, they wouldn't even hold a torch to those guys. They look awesome.
Or even Smaug. Smaug looks.
Smaug looks
maybe he would have been cooler if he was a different type of dragon, but he works and
still looks awesome.
Mad.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite film dragons. Cool.
And Benedict Cumberbatch did a fantastic job bringing his character and voice alive by doing the voice acting. That I'm not mad at it, even though I have disappointments.
So since this is a AI season of the podcast, correct?
Yes.
I thought it would be fun to see what AI would give us if we imagined that AI, if we used AI to imagine a Hobbit story from Del Toro's point of view, from his art style. Okay.
With the color palettes and everything.
I have quite a few AI generations to go through, but I will say a lot of these is not correct to what he's already said his vision is, but I think it might shed some interesting light onto some approaches that he might have taken, especially like with Gollum.
You put in
stuff,
the
right?
prompts what prompts did you give us?
I put in like Guillermo Del Toro filmmaking style, like the 3 trolls turning to stone, you know what I mean? Or from the Hobbit story, you know what I mean? I use those kind of terms, right?
Okay,
and it gave me quite a bit. So the first one is Smaug, and this is already different from how he described, but I thought like the teeth and the horns were interesting.
With the thin face. Yeah, the horns are definitely a Del Toro kind of
Exactly. This is another version. This is more of a traditional dragon. It's just kind of what AI gave me. So it's not I don't think it's very representative of what he actually was envisioning, right?
Okay.
I put in the trolls, okay? And I thought the outfit was a very unique perspective here.
I definitely see more like goblins.
Right. What did I put in? Trolls or goblins? I might have put goblins in this. I might have made this for goblins. I might have used trolls somewhere else.
I'll tell you what, you want to make something look practical, throw a felt hat on top of it. A nice felt hat. Make that thing fluffy.
Like the cave goblins, this is a very interesting look for somebody like them, right? Here's another version. They put a camera in there for some reason, but I like the Del Toro skulls and the clock and everything. Interesting. And then this is more dressed up, but this is like an older kind of well-kept goblin. This looks like something you might see from Harry Potter.
So the light feels very Del Toro.
Exactly. Very, very interesting choices for goblins here. This is Gollum. I wanted to see if he was to change Gollum, what it might look like, right?
Right.
Very similar, but it kind of flattened his face here. A little bit like a Del Toro character. But very still looking like Gollum. This one was very interesting to me. Okay. So that's cool. This looks like Gollum, but he's got more hair. It's more creepy because it's inside his cave, right?
The fingers.
I could see if Del Toro did his vision and made minor edits to Gollum. I could see something like this.
It could look like that, yeah.
This is very creepy, especially the claustrophobia of the cave right there and everything. Dude, this is a really
imagine
epic
being
shot.
in this hole and that dude's coming at you.
No,
that would be an epic scene of Bilbo trying to back through a hole,
backwards,
backing up backwards, and then Gollum comes in from this angle.
He comes up and he's looking into the hole and he's like, I see you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something crazy like that. Bottles. Yeah, exactly. Freaking awesome, dude. This is a really good version of Del Toro's Gollum, in my opinion.
It's filled with pockets.
So I did a couple landscapes of the Shire. Sort of more
cartoon-esque.
Kind of more bubbly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Everything feels a little bit more bubbly.
A little bouncy. Yeah.
A little bouncy. Here's another one. A little bit more of an interesting take, but a similar vibe to the Shire, right?
Yeah.
So very, very fascinating kind of
the Shire here. Reminds me of something from like Swedish or German almost.
Or even, because a lot of them have the grass because they're in hills, like the old Scottish houses that were made with guys, a dirt. They would take a dirt piece.
When I think of Scottish, I think of very brick, but not brick, like stone heavy.
They would
rolling hills, yes, but stone.
They would build the outside of the house with stone, and then they would essentially make the roof out of pieces of dirt, and it would grow grass on top of it.
Right. Okay. I also did Thorn, Oak, and Shield. This is like one where I feel like it was kind of trying to resemble Del Toro a little bit.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But this is kind of like a version. I actually could see Ian McShane's face in this version of Thorn, Oak, and Shield a little bit.
Yeah, I could see it there. Or who was that guy who was in Star Wars that passed away? He was.
I know who you're talking about. The one
Ray Stevens.
Yeah,
Ray Stevens, who he was also in the Three Musketeers with Orlando Bloom. He played Porthos. Right. I could see him as a really cool dwarf.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he was Porthos.
I didn't even realize that. I was gonna say, who's the guy in the movie you like? The not the monster, the alien one where it's gross and
what are you talking about?
He played the dad on Sky High. That's the only movie I could think of.
Kurt Russell?
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell could have played a dwarf?
That would have been a weird dwarf. Yeah, I don't know. That's a strange casting.
I would have liked it.
Could he have been like the mayor of Lake Town? Maybe.
All right, so here's a little bit of
Del Toro again.
Del Toro, exactly. A dwarf fighting orcs.
Goblin character? That's Del Toro?
No, the big guy.
I'm kidding.
So I put in orcs and dwarves warring, right?
Yeah.
And it just kind of gave me some interesting poses. It didn't really look like they were fighting each other. Here's another version of orcs during war.
Okay.
Which there actually probably wouldn't be much war.
Very blue.
But yeah, well, it feels kind of Del Toro.
These orcs have a dwarfish look to them.
A little bit.
These ones in the front,
or more Uruk-hai.
Or Uruk-hai.
Yeah.
Cool.
And there's a lot of bald ones too, right?
The one that's not bald in the front, kind of there. The second guy in the front.
Yeah, he looks like an Uruk-hai.
He looks very Uruk-hai.
Yeah. I love just the giant orc behind him. That's a very interesting take.
I pointed at my screen. I went and pointed at my screen like you guys can see what I'm pointing at.
This one looks like the dwarf is leading the orcs, but but there's another warring photo. So this is actually the three trolls that get turned to stone. I was trying to recreate that.
Okay.
I got this really, really interesting image, very more bubbly, more less of like the cave troll in the Fellowship of the Ring. It's like they kind of matched the style of the cave troll to the cave trolls that get turned to stone in The Hobbit.
I could tell you, I could almost assuredly tell you kind of what I think the trolls would look like in Del Toro's, because he had a Netflix show about trolls. And I'm sure they would look somewhat similar to those.
Right. Here's another version of them. Three giant trolls. I like how big these trolls feel.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very fascinating. And then I did some of the Mirkwood elves. And the two things I noticed is there's a couple that have beards, I think, and they kind of resemble more like wizard kind of looks. But with this one was interesting because all of these Del Toro style Mirkwood elves from the Hobbit story, they're all older and they got crazy eyebrows.
Crazy eyebrows.
Crazy eyebrows. All of them have that.
I think the guy, the elf in the movies has some pretty crazy eyebrows, if I'm not
crazy
wrong.
Eyebrows.
Does he? Don't they kind of swoop
maybe
out a little bit?
I wouldn't say they were crazy. I would say they were, a little emphasized.
He definitely his design, that elf's design, feels like a Del Toro design.
Yeah. Here's one that's also an elf, but it kind of resembles wizards more, or dwarvish kind of things.
Oh, yeah.
With the beard. I don't know why the AI went with beards for a couple of these, but I thought I'd include them. At least like the pointy ears and the eyebrows. You know what I mean? The background is interesting. The background elves is a little bit more trolly-ish. But
okay, so I'm not thinking of his eyebrows are pretty normal, but I'm definitely thinking he's got like a big kind of crown that comes off the side of his head.
He definitely has that.
Feels very Del Toro.
Here's another Mirkwood elf that AI tried to make from Del Toro style. Again, it feels kind of like a really old elf that's more wizardish. You know what I mean? But interesting choices, I think, overall.
And I think Jackson did a good job of having no old elves. I think, because that would be weird. Even Elrond is kind of max age looking. Galadriel, because she's pretty ancient.
Right. This is just one that I was just trying to get a room, you know what I mean, to see the kind of styles. I love like at the top, like the little things that are just you don't really know what they are, but they're hanging from stuff. You know what I mean? The contrast of blue and the warm
something
candles.
like this in Lake Town.
Yeah.
Or
and so
Mirkwood.
this is just kind of an environment, a room, or you might say, of Del Toro style.
A room, you might say.
A room, you might say. There's some characters in there.
Yeah.
And then I tried to get one of Bilbo and Gandalf, and they kept giving me bearded.
So this is clearly Martin. This is clearly Martin Freeman. Based on
this looks like
cheeks. and that is Albus Dumbledore.
Exactly. There was another one that looked more like him, but that I didn't pull that one.
Bilbo, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?
Bilbo's looking like the song pastor from a contemporary Christian church.
Yeah. I love his little bowl candle.
I'ma take you higher.
The same bowl candle that Del Toro is holding at the top of these slides.
Did you put that ring in the Goblet of Fire?
But that's all the AI generations I had. I thought some of them were pretty enlightening. I love the Gollum one in the cave, and I like. I think I like the three trolls also. Right.
It is kind of interesting. I don't feel like this is something that you should fully play off of, but if you were trying to storyboard a movie or a script screenplay for like a Lord of the Rings, how would you, if you went to AI and just said, design me what you think an elf would look like, and just kind of take some ideas from and be like, let's implement some of these ideas. Like
throw a bunch of different prompts of different kinds of elves in there, and then throw a whole bunch of like color palettes into your AI. See what kind of rooms it gives you. See what kind of costume colors it gives you.
Yeah,
that could definitely help you storyboard.
But you do have to be careful there, because then if you did do that and relied on that a little too much, then you just get like the acolyte. So
true. What I would do here is take those images to my artists. And say, this is kind of what I'm looking for. I hope this is kind of, what I want my vision to be. I hope the color palettes and these examples help you guys as we storyboard this whole thing. Yeah. And that, for artists, giving them reference and inspiration is really going to help them know what you want. Exactly. That way you're not just completely cutting artists out of your thing. 'Cause it's like, I could just use AI.
Right. Exactly. I think this is all pretty insightful. What did you guys think?
I enjoyed it. I love
a little Del Toro, get a second.
Well, looking into the world of Del Toro and Middle Earth combo, you know what I mean?
It's kind of sad that
what could have been.
Yeah, that we got what we got. They should have let the two directors who knew what they wanted just let them go.
Yeah,
just give them the stuff. And I was looking at kind of what Del Toro was doing at that time. They were pitching the show for The Strain, in like 2006 or 2008. And by 2010, they were really trying to get that ball rolling.
So it looks like The Strain was probably the project that Del
at least
Toro
one
was
of
getting
them.
to.
Yeah.
Right. So with that, let's go ahead and thank the Patreon member, Karina.
Ooh, thank you.
Thank you, Karina, for being a supporter of us over on Patreon. She chose Patreon, but if you're interested in being a supporter, you could go to Patreon or just do YouTube memberships on the Wiseworks Studio channel over on YouTube. You get the same thing. It's cost the same amount of dollars, and you wouldn't believe it. You won't believe it when I say it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's only $3.99 a month.
$3.99.
Only $3.99. We've said it quite a few times. We'll continue to say it. It's so cheap. You can get a subscription monthly to us and help support us and get your cup of coffee because it's so cheap. You don't even feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Financially, you don't even feel it. How much does Netflix cost these days? $24?
Basically, yeah. It's ridiculous.
You can support some creators of content that you enjoy weekly, either on Patreon or YouTube memberships, and have your coffee because it's super cheap and affordable. You don't have to skip out on any of your life luxuries. You get the podcast early. You get exclusive pre-shows where we record them before every podcast. We record a pre-show, right? You also get a bunch of other exclusive stuff over there. So go check us out. Links in the description if you want Patreon, or just hit the join button on YouTube. We thank you, Karina, for choosing to support us. We really appreciate it. Before we go to the last segment, it's going to be kind of a hard pivot. I wanted to see if there's anything you guys wanted to throw out there, right? Because I don't want to jolt the audience or you two too much.
I mean, I'm ready for that shock.
You ready?
Claire?
No. I haven't been watching too much like movies stuff. I've been watching a lot of movie review type stuff and podcasts. I've been watching and mostly podcast type stuff like horror type podcast stuff. So it's been, that's what I've been listening to.
You've been hearing horror stories through podcasts.
I love it.
Yeah. That's
there was a lot of stuff in the early 2000s and 2010s that I missed horror wise, and sort of experiencing seeing people read through some of those stories and experiencing them is really fun.
That's great. Any recommendations you would give us?
Of the story itself, or of like one of the podcasts?
One of the podcasts, bro. I want to hear what you're hearing.
So I've been watching. One of them is the guy who makes Meat Canyon.
Okay.
Him and Wendigoon, who is a horror YouTuber, talks about that kind of stuff. They do a podcast called, what's it called?
Do you watch on YouTube or do you listen on Spotify or another platform?
I listen on YouTube.
Okay, gotcha. Yes.
Gosh, what I cannot. Creepcast is what it's called.
Creep, CREEP.
Yeah, Creepcast. They've got a number of episodes. It's probably only in like the teens.
Okay,
so episodes. So it's pretty new, started. But it's fun, and I would recommend they do the left right game. Is a story. It's an old Reddit, or not Reddit, but like creepypasta story that was on Reddit back in the day, And the left-right
scary
games
Italian, as they like to say.
Yeah, it's fun. It's that one's it's good horror, but also good story, and it's not as kind of like cringy as some of the other ones that they read.
Wait, cringy. Wait, are you saying horror podcasts can be cringy?
Yeah, well, some of the stories that they're reading are what's considered like classic internet horror. Like Ben Drowned. Ben Drowned is an old like horror story, or and they're kind of, some of those can be well written, and then some of them like what is it? Is it Jack the Killer or something? Can be really cringe because they were written by like a 13-year-old, but for some reason they got really popular because like I guess other 13-year-olds were reading them,
and so people started talking about them.
So what they're kind of doing is going back and reading these and being like, were they good? Were they not good? The left-right game, I think, is really good.
All right, there you go. So Creepcast,
that's my recommendation,
and left-right game.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Creepcast is brand new, so go check it out if you want to get in early like Wyatt has. So moving into the next section, have you guys online heard this weird turn of phrase? All right. In today's culture, we're referring to series or movies because of streaming services referred to as content.
Yes.
Vice versa. You hear people on like YouTube, right, refer to their stuff as filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at it, you're like, that's just content. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
I know.
So
exactly
we're doing a little bit. All right. Our own experience. So me and Joshua's done a handful of indie films. Wyatt has helped us behind the scenes on indie films. We've done a lot of content.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take our experience and we're going to actually do a content creation versus filmmaking. All right.
Okay.
So let me pull up the old Photoshop if you guys don't mind.
Ooh.
All right.
Are we doing ranking here? Like almost
it's not really ranking. It's more categorizing, sort of. All right. Let's see. Screen share, window. Here we go. All right. Pulling up the old Photoshop. So we're gonna do content creation versus filmmaking. And what we're going to do is we are going to define importance, because in today's world with streaming, as I already mentioned, these terms are being thrown out there and it offends some people. Other people don't care. What we're going to do is we are going to define the difference between content creation and filmmaking. Mm-hmm. Does that sound fun to you guys?
Yeah.
No, not really. I'm ready to defend this podcast. I'm kidding.
Are these pictures ones you found on the internet?
They are.
Yeah. I mean,
they're internet pictures.
Your cast, they're not very diverse. You got your white guy.
Well, this one is. They got a lady with white hair. That's Storm from the X-Men.
That is Storm from the X-Men. I'm on the filmmaking side. Okay, so I kind of jotted down, in my own opinion, kind of the top necessary things for both categories, for both content creation and filmmaking. But we're going to rank these separately as the level of importance for each, right?
Okay.
And that's where we're going to see where the difference is, because when you're approaching the creative process through video format, different importances show up. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna rank these and either debate or agree, or however we're gonna do based on importance. So the first thing we're gonna start with,
I'm not gonna agree.
The first thing we're gonna start with is promotional art. So this could be posters for films, stuff around that, or for content creation, thumbnails. You know what I mean? So promotional art, in my personal opinion, I'm comfortable just right off the bat saying promotional art for content creation is like number one in some capacity.
I was
going
to say number two for
okay. Joshua, what do you say?
Promotional art?
Yeah, for content creation, like thumbnails, right? Where would you rank that as importance on the content
if you're talking
creation?
specifically about like thumbnails, I would say yes, it's under content creation. If we're talking about promotional art like movie posters, then I would say that's under production. But I would lean towards more. Oh, so you're putting it in both categories?
Yeah, we're all of these things
I think
have
the
the same thing.
promotional art is important to a film. I don't think it's as important as some other things.
Right.
Yeah.
I think like poster and stuff, like promotional art.
I would,
Well, we're putting it in both categories. We're just ranking it.
Listen, all of these categories I have written out are necessary for both content creation and filmmaking.
Mhm.
But the category of importance is different. Okay.
I was confused. I thought we were saying one is one. Promotional art, yeah, it's pretty low. It's like 7, maybe 8.
What are you thinking, Wyatt? We can move these around also.
I would throw it comfortably at 6 or 7.
I'm gonna put it at 7.
But for the content creator, your promotional art is pretty important. Thumbnails especially are going to be, the first thing somebody sees, and then how you craft that on your channel is kind of going to be how people feel about it.
Exactly. And I do think there's a lot of different types of content creation. You have other social platforms other than YouTube, but since YouTube is the long form platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to keep it in the realm of YouTube, sort of, since you got films that are long or series that are long and content that is long, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got people out there making like 7-hour videos.
Right. So we're going to keep it in kind of the YouTube content realm, which lines do get blurry a little bit because people post films on YouTube, like short films like we have. So the next is titling. All right. So titling a movie or a show versus titling a YouTube video.
For a movie, it's not important. Like,
it's because that's just.
I mean, what was the last, have a Mission Impossible 7? But what's the actual title of Mission Impossible 7? Nobody really knows or cares.
Dead Reckoning.
Yeah, I
don't even remember what it is.
There's sometimes when the title of a movie can really be interesting and it can hit and make me want to go see it. And then there's other times when it's like The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
And you're like, I don't go.
And you're like, I don't need all that.
So where are you putting it down to 8 or 9? You think?
Titling 8? For movies? Yeah,
8. 8?
Yeah.
Okay. And we can move these around, as I already said. Titling for videos is either going to be 1 or 2. Maybe 1 or 3.
I would say
I'd say 3.
Yeah, because I think people are going to see your thumbnails first. So thumbnails is more important than title because that's the first thing that they see. And so thumbnails outranks title by 1 marker, I think.
Yeah.
Shooting. So the filming or shooting of the content.
Movies, it's important.
Movies, it's very
important.
What are we putting at, like a 2?
Sure.
I was 2 or 3. It's important.
I'm gonna say for today's world, I'm gonna put it at a 3.
3,
right? I think 3 is comfortable.
I think maybe 15 years ago, shooting was more important because you're having to do different things with cameras.
Not to jump ahead, I personally think editing in today's world is a little bit more important than shooting.
Yeah, I would
a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for films, but for shooting for content creation,
I put it at like 8. Literally put it at 8.
There's so much popular content where the shooting is an afterthought.
It's a camera. There's
no lighting. Yes,
it's
exactly.
Whatever.
It's a corn dog.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, this is kind of how I guessed because I crafted this and I wanted to make the distinction, but we're already seeing a total differentiation between content creation and filmmaking, but we're going to keep going down this list. All right. So editing, obviously, I think editing kind of lives in the 2 range for films. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It is, I'm of the opinion that if your editing is just basic and solid,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be basic. Christopher Nolan does not edit basic.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
I think if your editing is normal level sufficient, right?
Okay, sufficient.
Normal level filmmaking good, right? We're talking some like think of like the, you know, some good editing in like a Marvel movie or something, right? Just piece together bare minimum.
Sure.
I think a movie can have that and still be an incredible movie if other aspects of the movie are really, really good.
Right.
I don't think that I don't think your editing has to be super special or anything to have a good movie.
I don't have animation here, so honestly, like CG and stuff for films kind of falls under editing in that category.
Yeah,
right?
I would put it at like a higher up for production.
I think in today's world with digital filmmaking and everything, I think the editing, in my opinion, needs to be solid.
I mean, it needs to be good, yes, but still, I think if you're writing and talent, like we're gonna get into market or writing, storytelling, on-screen talent, those I think will bolster your movie if your editing is pretty basic.
For sure. Yeah, it will, and we see that with Martin Scorsese all the time.
Even if your editing is bad.
Mm-hmm.
If your editing is bad, but your talent is really good, I think that can save a movie. If your editing is bad and the story is bad and characters,
but editing can mess up a performance.
It can
time out a performance.
Editing can kill a performance. Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll move these around up and down however we need, but we'll keep editing at 2 for now if that's all right.
That's cool.
Editing for content creation it doesn't make
important.
or break.
I think it's a solid 5.
That's what I was thinking. It's kind of in the middle of the road because there are some content creators that do no editing and some that are only popular because they edit well.
Because they edit really good.
So it's really middle of the road, honestly.
And there's so many creators that do 0 editing. Like you film yourself and you throw the video up and they do good. Yes. And then there's guys that just are making incredible edits and making it look, and I mean, there are editors who are doing great jobs and editors who are doing really bad jobs.
Exactly.
Pokemon's editing. Have you seen that? You seen that man talk about?
Pokimane?
Yeah. Have you seen the drama about her editors?
No.
No, I haven't.
Bro, you gotta check it out. You gotta check it out. Her editor. We shouldn't talk about it here, but her one of her editors is down bad, having issues editing her content.
Probably, I would imagine. So writing, for sure, writing's got to be pretty high up for filmmaking, right?
Yeah,
writing really does make or break.
Is it number 1?
It's either going to be number 1 or number 2 in the end.
I think it's storytelling.
Because you're writing.
I would put it at number 2 because I'm spoiler alert. I'm thinking storytelling is going to be a little higher than writing.
I think those two are sort of, in my mind, like pretty hand in hand.
They work together.
Okay, so here's the thing.
In the same way that I feel like your editing and your shooting are hand in hand, because what you do with the shooting is going to affect kind of how you edit.
Right. Well, why I distinguished between the two is partly because if you're doing a film, you can write dialogue, you can write characters doing things, but if you don't know how to tell a 3-act story, then you've messed up your storytelling. In the same way that you can create for content creation a video and you can write a script of things to say, but if you're not telling a story, you may not connect with people on the most basic fundamental level, which people respond to storytelling. Yeah. So that's why I distinguished it from writing, right? Even though they are in the same vein.
Yeah, writing's for filming is very important. It's either 1 or 2.
I think it's number 2, and storytelling is better because you can have a little cheesy dialogue, but your storytelling is good.
Yes,
and
that's a hard agree.
And so storytelling is going to be higher. So yeah, just bump those down. And storytelling. We already gonna. That's fine.
Well, if we're already talking about it, I'll just go ahead and add it.
Yeah. Go ahead and bump it up there. Storytelling.
Writing
for. Oh yeah. Back to writing.
Writing for content creation
is also important, but I would bump it down to maybe 2 also.
I would actually say that writing for content creation is really low.
Yeah,
not really low.
Not all the time, but for a lot of people, writing most content creation is on the fly.
Yeah, it's
most
not
of
as
ours
important.
is on the fly. Like we're not writing out reaction videos. You know what I mean?
We don't.
We don't really write.
We don't write out podcasts.
We don't write out too much stuff. So I think that's the way for a lot of YouTubers, especially.
Yeah.
It's probably less important than editing.
Less important than editing.
Editing is telling your YouTube story better than your writing is.
It honestly, I wouldn't say it's less important, but I think right now in the culture of content creation and who's the majority of people doing it, I think it's actually not less important, but less used than shooting.
It's a very small percentage.
It's not the worst, but I would put it at 8 and put shooting at 7. Can we do that?
Yeah, okay, I don't think it's
and then
like
bump it up 1. Because I'm gonna just say crew for content creation is not
necessary at all.
A crew isn't important. Your talent is a talent.
Like crew is eventually important.
If you want to market those in with crew, then maybe it is important, but not really.
It's different. On camera talent and crew are different.
Yeah.
Right. So you're jumping to crew, and crew's at the bottom of content creation.
Yeah, because you
don't need a crew, and a lot of people don't.
On-camera talent. So
right. All right. So if we go to for crew, since we're doing that, let's do crew for filmmaking.
Crew's middle of the road for.
Well, I don't know. I've not had
a good crew.
I have not successfully had a production day for even our small indie films unless I had support. Yeah. Unless I had help. There's been days where it was just me, and I would consider those days real duds, like real failures creatively. Mm-hmm. I think crew is extremely important. Having people, even if it's a small crew, having a crew of people working with you on the project for a film is way important. Because if you do it by yourself for even an indie film, or you do it with just 1 or 2 people, it's a real struggle bus, in my opinion.
Dude, where do we put crew? Because if you don't have a crew to help you make your movie, what's the point of editing and shooting and writing and storytelling?
I think crew goes above that.
I don't know. I think crew goes right where you had it, right in the middle. It is important, but if you don't have a good story, it's not important. If you don't have a good edited movie, like it would be terribly edited, and your crew you could have 100 crew that shot the thing, but then you get to the editing bay and it's terrible editing. Well, nobody cares about the crew that shot it.
I think you're not getting a good edit if you don't have a good crew working.
You're not. But I think if you're editing,
I tend to lean with Wyatt on this.
I'm going to say,
not going to get a good end result.
If you look at it in order, right, of what it takes to make. I'm not saying that's necessarily where it needs to be in order of importance, but if you don't get the story on camera in a way that you need to get it on camera, and that requires your crew, your editing is going to be
crew and shooting is right in the same vein.
I think it'll turn your editing process into, and it could make your editing bad if you didn't shoot it correctly, if your crew didn't help you get it correctly.
Yeah. I like both of your guys' arguments, honestly.
How many dudes do you need for editing?
Put editing above crew, but then leave shooting underneath crew.
Because I think you can edit with 1 dude. It'll take you a while.
Well, there's a lot of directors who edit themselves.
Yeah, but
Olin Rogers did all the editing for all of his old.
You can't get projects. Your movie made without your crew.
Right. You need a crew to shoot well, but you don't necessarily need a crew to edit something well. Marketing, marketing is extremely, extremely important in film. I personally think maybe marketing goes at like a 6 for film.
Okay.
Just because it, again, this is kind of where like I've learned. I think there's a really good artistic outlet to make films, but ultimately you want the audience, you want an audience to enjoy it. And if you don't have good marketing or a good marketing strategy, no one's ever going to see it because it's really competitive out there.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
For like, so are we talking about simply making a good movie, or are we talking about making a good movie that is received well, or is received at all?
One.
Well, because if nobody's watching you can have the best movie on the planet, but if nobody watches it but you, I think marketing is
a little higher than
extremely important to a film. If nobody's watching your movie, it's not a film. That's a
passion project.
It's a passion project. Yeah.
I think it's above. I think it's at 3.
Above editing.
Bro, marketing might be number 1 for making a movie.
It is, but you have to have a good story.
Well, you have to tell a good story before.
I think it's
3. Know what? I actually I'm kind of feeling this. You have to have a good story to market anything, but past that,
it's up to you.
It's up to you.
Past that, it's up to you. Okay.
I kind of like this right here.
All right.
Let's go to storytelling for content creation because we skipped that a while back.
It's like a 6 for me. You watch people and they'll
a lot of people don't know how to tell a story in content creation.
A lot of people are just like, hey, we're watching this video and yeah.
It's not prioritized.
Which, we've done because we've done reaction stuff. There's not much storytelling in a reaction video.
No, I mean you can learn to infuse some, but yeah,
we could get there. Yeah,
the general content creation on the internet, like you're operating at a high level for content creation if you're prioritizing storytelling strongly. You know what I mean? Because most of the content internet world is not.
Yeah.
So then let's do marketing for content creation.
It's, I don't know.
The promotional art is the marketing.
Well, not necessarily. Marketing is posting to other social platforms. It's interacting with Reddit threads that is in the same vein of your video to
I would say
build
it's
a relationship.
4, though.
I
would just put it right where it's open.
Yeah, 4 seems decent. However, if we're looking at it in contrast,
not a lot of people do external marketing though.
If we're looking at it in contrast to some of the other things, I think your editing is probably more important than your marketing.
Yeah.
And it's definitely since editing on movies is at 4.
No, editing is not more important for content creation. People don't edit videos, and it can still get a lot.
You think the marketing itself is more important?
A video that's a live stream. Mm-hmm. A live stream can get a lot of views.
True.
And there's no editing.
Mm-hmm.
I would leave it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right, on-camera talent. I think for content creation, this has got to be number 1.
Yeah.
Easy.
Sure.
All of the other stuff can work and does play a part, but the most successful content creators are good on camera. Are good on camera, man. Right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the tickets. If you don't have storytelling, if you don't have good writing, if you don't have good editing, if you don't know how to use a camera, if you don't have a crew, if you don't know how to title videos well, people will come back if they like you.
True. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Content creation on camera talent is the top of the list, in my opinion.
I would put on camera talent and marketing in the same vein for production?
I think on-camera talent sits comfortably.
When you say
at number
production, are you
one.
talking about filmmaking?
Yes. The last one.
Talking about filmmaking. Yeah. I think it's higher than titling. Okay. I think on-screen talent used to be in old Hollywood a lot bigger of a deal than it is now.
Yes.
I think it still is a little bit of big of a deal.
It is, but we don't have movie stars that sell movies these days.
Not as big as it used to be.
They think we do, but we don't.
When I say on-screen talent, in my mind, that you should have changed the wording for this. Names
on-camera talent is the word I use, not on-screen talent.
Well, names attached to the project is what I'm thinking of, because
but that doesn't work for content creation.
An M. Night Shyamalan movie, I want to watch because I like M. Night Shyamalan, or Christopher Nolan. I like those names, but they're not on screen, and they are attached to the production.
All right, but I'm more so using examples, because there's a lot of examples that creates a film. There's a lot of examples that creates content creation, but these are the categories that fall under both. You know what I mean? For both areas, and we're defining importance for each. So
yeah, it didn't used to be as big of a thing for like this director is filming this movie, so I got to go see it. We look at it these days as that's the case. Like, oh, it's a Steven Spielberg movie, right? Back in the day, they were seeing actors that they recognized, right, as a leading man or woman,
right,
who were in the movies that they recognized. That's the reason they were going to see the film, and how they knew it was going to be good, because you knew that actor was good. Right. It's only in recent years, and I say recent, I mean the past 20 to 25 years, that directors themselves have kind of become talent.
True.
And
a selling
but I know what you're saying here on as far as what's helping, what's making this movie possible and popular, and who you have on the camera acting, delivering your lines and storytelling and everything. It's important.
Yes.
Would you put it between crew and shooting, like 6?
No, I would actually put it at 7 and move these 2 down.
Okay, I mean that's fine
personally, because
that works for me.
For filmmaking, like look at The Chosen. Almost everybody in The Chosen is relatively unknown before The Chosen, and yet they're the biggest show in the world.
I do want to point out that the word talent is important. They do have to be talented. I really don't like
Brie Larson.
People who just deliver lines. I've seen Brie Larson act, though. I've seen her act. I've seen her emote,
like actually
right? Actually act. The like the main protagonist in The Acolyte has one face, and it's like
right. Yeah, it's not very versatile.
Right.
She smiles
need
a few
more
times.
than that. You need
even
in something like Harry Potter. One of the big complaints is like Harry's not doing much as far as acting. Ron and Hermione are doing the majority of the emotional acting.
Right.
But yeah, no, you need to be able to act.
So looking at this list, anything you would question, anything you would change now that we have stuff laid out?
But it's majority, I would say, right?
I think we sort of edited it as we went. And I think we landed on it pretty well.
Right. So let me just, for the audio listeners, let me just go ahead and break this down. I'm sorry, this is a visual heavy podcast. So if you're listening, I do apologize, but I'm gonna speak to you guys for a minute. All right. So for content creation, this is the areas of importance. So number 1 is on-camera talent. Number 2 is promotional art, like thumbnails. Number 3 is titling. Number 4 is marketing. Number 5 is editing. Number 6 is storytelling. 7 is shooting. 8 is writing. And 9 is crew. All right?
Yeah.
For filmmaking, this is the distinction between the two. For filmmaking, number 1 is storytelling. Number 2 is marketing. Number 3 is writing. Number 4 is editing. Number 5 is crew. Number 6 is shooting. Number 7 is on-camera talent. Number 8 is promotional art, like posters and such. And number 9 is titling. So a few big differences here is titling are really offset. On-camera talent is really offset. Promotional art is really offset, right? You got editing is pretty close at 4 and 5.
Shooting
is pretty close. So there are a couple crossovers that kind of land in the same area level of importance, but ultimately they're with some of these main heavy hitters of importance and not importance, the script is flipped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so with that, the internet, for all you content creators out there on the YouTubes, you guys now have a distinction. Content creation versus filmmaking. This is the distinction. From here on, I don't want any of us to, if you're talking about filmmaking, if you're talking about like something off a streaming service like Max or Netflix, do not call it content, and vice versa.
Yeah, that bothers me.
Unless it is like a film, like a short film on YouTube, do not call YouTube film. You don't call YouTube videos filmmaking. You know what I mean? Because it's two different things.
It bothers me when you got guys like Kevin Feige being like, we're making lots of content.
Yeah. Ugh. And if I'm being honest, that statement that he made was one of the reasons that got me thinking in this direction.
Once they started making content rather than films.
Yeah, there is an aspect though today when you make a film, there's a lot of content that is created around that film for marketing purposes, stuff for social media, stuff for, behind the scenes stuff, interviews. That's all content that's surrounding a film.
Yeah.
So it is kind of hard to distinguish when someone says like, "Oh, we're making content." Is this for the film or is this for the promotional bits surrounding it?
I think for the most part these days when they're saying content, they're talking about TV shows and movies.
Yeah.
Well, they're trying to view like we need content for Disney Plus. You know what I mean? You don't need to view it that way. You need to make a Marvel movie and then you can house it on Disney Plus, right?
Yeah.
That's how you need to think about it. And that's how people who are serious about these different crafts, they pay attention to these kind of things. And thank you guys so much for talking about Del Toro and Middle Earth. Thank you for talking about content creation and filmmaking with me. I had a good time.
Yeah.
And we hope that you guys enjoyed it. Remember, subscribe to the channel, like this video, or I'm going to say something I never have said on a podcast.
Oh, no.
If you listen, all right, if you listen on Apple Podcast or Spotify, I'll throw it out there, leave us a review.
Yeah.
If you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast.
Not very often, though.
Leave us a review over on those audio platforms. We would really appreciate it. But if you watch on YouTube, we're glad you're here. Subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you guys next time. That's it.
Leave that in. We'll see you guys next time.